I'm neurodivergent and sometimes question myself on whether my expectations are reasonable. I know I overthink these things. We've been married for 2 years, together for 6. I love my husband loves me, but I sometimes question if he truly loves me for me or just loves the feeling I give him. There are so many things I appreciate him for. He is my biggest cheerleader, is fiercely protective, he's caring, charismatic, funny, and we have amazing banter and never argue. He occasionally buys me flowers and will do the dishes after I make dinner. We've had issues for a number of years now that all seem to come under the umbrella of a lack of effort or action. There's a definite lack of willingness to be proactive, and we've had many conversations where I've expressed that I'm tired of feeling like a mother rather than a wife, and that everything falls to me. I've put into perspective for him just how much I do for us. I plan, I cook, I clean, I delegate, I follow up, I sort out the problems we have. There have been many things over time that I've tried to have him take off my plate. Reasonable things like arranging a repair on the car, and it is only done more than a year later when I finally break down. Our intimacy life isn't at all where I'd like it to be. We have no kids, and I'm wildly attracted to him. When it happens, it's great, but there seems to be little interest from his side. I know for sure he's not cheating, and it's realistically always been this way. I'm not athletic, but am thin and take some pride in my appearance, so I don't think it's anything in that regard. We've had many chats where I've asked him to have it looked into. I love him, and if it's just low libido, we'll deal with it. But it's previously been his lack of effort to bother with any investigation that hurts the most. Although I admit I get a bit crushed that I don't have a husband who constantly wants to jump my bones, there's no hunger there, and I wish there was. Every single thing in our life has been on my plate, and I am exhausted and have previously reached breaking point. There is so much in the background he hasn't been aware of that is just taken care of. Everything, really, but also financially. I was previously in a much higher paying role and was made redundant a few months back. I have taken a break over the past few months, during which time he willingly encouraged me to take my time and has been working hard to make all ends meet for both of us. I'm really grateful for his support. He never plans dates. He is much more of a homebody than I am, but I don't mind what the dates are. It would just be nice to spend some quality time together without having to think about things and feel wanted and worth the effort. A couple of years back, to try and help him along, I initiated a plan where we each had to plan one date each month. So every second Thursday, we could have something to look forward to and get out of the house together. After multiple cancellations and realizing that almost every single one of his dates was me going to meet him at the coffee shop right by his work, I realized it wasn't worth it, so I stopped reminding him. The dates stopped, and he never said anything about it. Please don't get me wrong, I'd be happy to just have a coffee date. I'd be happy with no-cost activities or anything like that. Anything that feels like he cared enough to put some effort in. This just felt like a bit of a cop-out. Typing this, I'm staring at a list on the fridge I wrote at the start of the year of easy date ideas to make things simple for him. There's everything from going for ice cream to suggested hikes and restaurants for nice dinners. Probably 30 options to choose from. I think we've done one. I told him some months back that I'll no longer be planning anything for the time being, and it's all on him. That hasn't exactly worked out in my favor. There are silly, small examples of things that make me nervous. We really want a dog, and occasionally puppies sit for a friend. The dog has issues and has to go out to the bathroom before 6 a.m. I'd ask him about it the night before. We live in a high-rise apartment, and he would complain and suggest I do it because he already had to be up for work at 5:30, meaning he would have to be up at 5:15 instead of 5:30 versus me being up at 6 instead of 7:30. He would eventually do it after grumbling, but I would feel like the bad guy for asking. I have bad back problems and am admittedly not great at being proactive about keeping them at bay. When they flare, they cause me great pain. And although he does sometimes happily massage my back or get me medication, if there's a week where I've asked a few times in a row, he becomes annoyed and complains. I get it. It's frustrating. He's tired and sore, and there's a million other things he'd rather be doing. But this pain gets so bad it affects my sleep, and it makes me think, what if something happened to me, or I got really sick or something? Would this person who loves me complain all the time about taking care of the person who is taking care of him every day? Would he stick around? If we're going to a birthday party, he will ask me if his outfit is okay. I'll tell him he looks nice, but his clothes need ironing, and he gets grumpy with me, says he won't bother, irons the clothes, but complains about it the whole time and gets annoyed about having to go out at all, taking all the fun out of it for me. A few months back, after another repeat emotional conversation, I told him again that as much as I love him, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I see the hurt in his eyes when he knows he's hurt me, and he has made efforts since. He's taken care of a few things of his own accord lately and arranged one day out for us. I still had to investigate parking and how to get there, but it was something. He booked an appointment he'd been putting off and has taken the time to ask about my feelings more regularly. He's also quit using Zaza, which was a big deal for him, and has improved his mental health. He has also not only been covering all our costs recently, but sorting out the payments on his own. He's made some more efforts in the bedroom too. It feels a bit forced, but I'm happy to feel heard. I just can't help but feel I still want more, and it's all down to this effort part, and I don't know that he will ever get there. I hate that I feel it will always be a battle, and that I will never be able to completely let go or switch off. I read something recently that talked about men who want a wife but don't want to be a husband, and can't help but feel that might be what I'm dealing with. Am I completely out of line? Are our wants and needs incompatible, or do I just need to check myself? I see the look on this man's face when he looks at me. I know he loves me, and he is my world. I truly can't picture my life without him. The effort is finally starting to show, but it feels so against his nature that I'm not sure it will last. He's my soulmate, but I feel like there's something missing. If you've made it this far, I'd love some insights and opinions. This man is everything to me, and this is obviously only a small part of the story, and one side of it at that. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Aw, welcome to what I like to call my alphabet soup. I'm ADHD, autistic, and dyslexic. Now that you are medicated, the autism that the ADHD has been hiding will start to emerge. It's an overwhelming but interesting journey. Our brains are amazing. One of the biggest challenges we can face is ADHD paralysis. There are times when I want to do something. It's the only thing I can think of, the only thing I want to do, and yet I physically can't do it. And that's even on medication. Body doubling can help get past that initial hurdle. It's not you doing it for them, but both of you agreeing on what you would like to get done and doing your own thing at the same time in the same room. For instance, him calling to make an appointment for an evaluation and medication. Be sure to do the research together on what body doubling is so that you both understand what it is and what it isn't, so neither of you feels nagged or like the nagger. Also, research pathological demand avoidance. Comment 2. You deserve to have someone who wants to take care of you, wants to sleep with you, wants to put in effort and time, and make your life easier the way you make theirs. Honestly, it sounds like your husband is also neurodivergent. Has he been evaluated for ADHD? Depression? Because he's showing all the symptoms of both. But like you said about his low libido, it's the lack of even trying to get it looked at, because at the end of the day, he doesn't care about you enough to overcome any of this. Now, for the update. Here's what happened. A couple of days after my last post, my husband planned a surprise dinner at a local Italian restaurant to celebrate my recent job search efforts. I was genuinely surprised, and honestly, the food was great. I really thought we were moving in the right direction. I even think he sensed that, because during dinner, he got a text from a contact named Danny. It was weird because he acted so nervous, like a kid who got caught doing something wrong, and he quickly put his phone away. I noticed, of course, but I didn't say anything about it. I just wanted to enjoy the evening. When we got home, he immediately fell asleep on the couch, leaving me feeling like I was the only one who really cared about the evening. The next week, I went to my parents' anniversary party and brought my husband along. I think it was supposed to be a good sign, but really, it wasn't. He didn't talk to my family at all and spent most of the evening on his phone. I confronted him about this behavior on the way home, but he brushed it off. Said he was looking for job opportunities. I tried to keep my cool, but I was really getting fed up. A few days later, I found an unopened letter addressed to him in the mailbox from a Zaza dispensary. I asked him about the letter, and he claimed it was an old subscription he forgot to cancel. I didn't believe him, but I let it go. A week later, we went to a friend's birthday party, and again, he was distant. I spotted him laughing and chatting with a woman I didn't recognize. That was the last straw. I had to ask him about it on the way home, and he insisted it was just a casual conversation. Yeah, right. The next day, I decided to check his social media for any clues and discovered he had been liking photos of that same woman. I was fuming. The following weekend, we had plans to visit my parents again for dinner. Before leaving, I noticed he was excessively grooming himself, which was unusual. At dinner, he acted overly charming with my parents, which felt forced and made me uneasy. After dinner, I caught him texting Danny again when he thought I wasn't looking. I decided to confront him directly and asked if he was hiding anything from me. He denied it and got defensive, causing a heated argument in front of my parents. The next morning, I received a message from him begging for me to come home. Instead of returning, I planned a trip to a nearby city for a weekend getaway with my sister. During the trip, I met a new group of friends who were fun and supportive. When I returned home, I decided to set clear boundaries with my husband and demanded transparency. He agreed to sit down and talk, but I noticed he was still hiding his phone during the conversation. I decided to check his phone while he was in the shower and found flirty messages from the woman he spoke to at the party. Instead of confronting him immediately, I decided to gather evidence for a more impactful discussion. The following week, I invited my husband to dinner at the same Italian restaurant where he surprised me. During dinner, I pulled out my phone to show him the messages, creating a tense atmosphere. I laid everything out, revealing I had been watching him closely and knew about the other woman. His face went pale, and he stuttered, trying to come up with excuses. I stood firm and said I couldn't continue a relationship built on lies. I left the restaurant feeling empowered and ready to move on from the deception. I'm planning to focus on myself and my future, having taken a definitive stand. Edit. I appreciate everyone's support. A few things to clarify. I did not confront him about the Zaza dispensary letter because I feared it would escalate things. I had a strong suspicion there was a deeper issue, which I confirmed later. When I checked his social media, I found that the woman he was talking to was someone he knew through his job. They hadn't worked together, but he had seen her at events. I didn't tell my parents about the situation until after I had left the restaurant that night. They were shocked and supportive. I'm currently focusing on self-care and taking things one step at a time. Am I the idiot for refusing to hand over my inheritance to my abusive parents? I am from India. Anyone from India could understand the toxic societal norms and toxicity in families, as they have faced it at least once in their lifetime. My family comes from a very high educational background, and I have always been the black sheep of the family rather than Indian society. I have always been outspoken, just, and have always stood my ground, even against elders if they are in the wrong, and I'm not. Being in Indian society, you are loathed for standing up for yourself against elders and fighting for yourself and your morals, even if you aren't wrong. Needless to say, I've been the prickly thorn in my family's eyes for a long time now, especially my parents. They are very mellow people when it comes to their family or in-laws. They let those people walk all over them and don't even protest. In turn, they vent their anger and frustration on me with physical and verbal abuse whenever it gets too much for them to take. Even at times when I fought with the extended family and the elders on their behalf, they would beat me or starve me. Even when the extended family would call me bad names or try to question my character or verbally abuse me, they would just stay silent and listen to it all and never once defended me, even when they knew and acknowledged in front of me that I wasn't in the wrong. I was just expected to take it all because they're family. Every time I would receive gift money on any occasion, they would take my money away and put it into their business, saying how it was for us, only our family. I never had any problems with that. I never felt safe in my own house, so I sought help from an old friend of my grandfather. They served in the army together. I learned mixed martial arts from him to defend myself and gain confidence, yet they didn't do much when I was getting their share of venting and getting beaten down to a pulp. I started taking part in illegal fights and fixed matches by taking bribes and losing on purpose. I'm not proud of it, but I really needed the money to become independent and stop depending on my parents. I took up part-time waitress jobs as well to earn extra, and at the end of the day, I was dead out of energy. I had to stop after about 2 years because I overdid my fights and suffered severe internal injuries and bleeding. Then came infection 19, and everything stopped. It increased their frustration, and I couldn't leave the country like I intended to do, regardless of working hard and saving up so much. The beatings increased. To appease their anger, I offered half of my saved-up money for their business, as their business took a severe hit due to infection 19, and offered to pay for my college for the first few semesters. They agreed quickly, and there were no beatings for a long, long time. After I gave the money, my mother tried to cozy up to me, and I declined her advances because I couldn't just forget what my parents put me through for all these years. I always kept my guard up in case they would stop this good people show and return to their real ways. But then, gradually, I started to warm up to them because they had been treating me well for far too long than I accepted, because deep down, I did seek the warmth and comfort of a family. But my happiness was short-lived. They started treating me with verbal abuse again. I started working from home and earning to ease their monetary responsibilities for getting me through university. That wasn't enough for them. They said they wanted more, and I caved in just to get their warmth from them again. Recently, my older grandfather passed away, and it turns out he had left me a good amount of money. Since I'm an adult now, and the policy matured, I was asked to come to the insurance company to sign the documents and collect the money receipt I got in the will so that I can collect the money from the bank later on. My father went with me and signed himself as a nominee. I don't know what that means. While returning home, I was discussing how I can now buy a new lens for my camera, upskill myself, and power up my work. I had been saving up for that lens for 4 years. Since I'm a freelance photographer, it would be a good investment, and the other half I plan to invest in investment funds for our family's future. He scolded me in front of people, saying how ungrateful and disrespectful I was to even suggest that I should be giving away that money that my grandfather gave me for my education to him, because as a daughter, that was the right thing to do, and that he already planned to use that money to make a new modular kitchen in the new apartment he just bought. He already sold lands and properties my grandfather left him to buy that apartment. I wouldn't have any problem with him taking the money if I didn't really absolutely have to invest in photography gear and if he didn't use me to get the money. When we got to the insurance company, it was already 4 p.m., and the agent told us the time was within 3 p.m., so we had to come some other time. But he played the victim card with the agent about how far we came from and how I had just graduated from college with dreams of going abroad, which almost got fulfilled because I got a chance in the States, but we had no money for the visa. Since my grandfather left that money to me, it would be of utmost help for my dreams. My father said these emotional things to soften up the agent, which worked. That's why I felt so dirty to be used like that. I fought back with him, saying how I really needed the lens, and he said he planned to give me 1/4 of the amount later on, but not now. I settled it with him, saying he can have it all, but just leave me the lens money. Today, I was receiving my fair share of verbal abuse from my mother when she said, "Look how you are surviving on your father's income, but you have the guts to contest for your grandfather's will at such an early age. How sly you are. Shame on you." I felt so dirty inside. I can't express it in words. I have always wanted to leave and go no contact with them, but I have always felt answerable to them for birthing me and getting me through school, feeding, clothing, and housing me for all these years. So, am I wrong for wanting to abandon my family and go no contact with them? Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post didn't have any comments. Now for the update. The morning after my last post, I get a call from my dad, and he wants to meet for dinner. Like, really? After everything? So we decide on a local Indian restaurant that we used to go to a lot as a family. I figured it would be a familiar place to talk. I show up a little early, thinking maybe we could have a calm conversation and actually work through this. I was kind of naive to think that would happen, but whatever. When my dad gets there, he has this serious look on his face. No hello, no how are you, just straight to the point. He asks me about the inheritance. I tell him I want to invest in photography gear, like we talked about before. And then he cuts me off, saying the money is for family obligations. Like, are you serious? This leads to us going back and forth about my plans and my financial independence. I'm trying to explain that I need to live my own life, and he just keeps saying I'm being selfish. He even has the nerve to say that I'm ungrateful for all the help they've given me during tough times. I had to remind him that I put my own needs aside for the family business. I mean, I sacrificed so much, and for what? Just to be told that this money is for family obligations? Just as we were getting into it, my mom shows up, and of course, she takes his side. She says I'm abandoning family responsibilities, and it just makes me even more mad. I stand my ground and say that I'm not a financial backup for the family, and that I want to pursue my passion, even if it means leaving them behind. That's when my dad slams his hand on the table, and it gets the attention of everyone in the restaurant. I'm not even joking. My mom tries to calm him down and suggests that we all take a break and then revisit this discussion. But at this point, I'm just done. I take a deep breath and leave the restaurant, feeling like I've made no progress, but also feeling a little more empowered. Later that week, I go to my grandfather's memorial service. It's all family and friends, but honestly, I just felt so out of place. While I'm there, I hear family members whispering about my decisions, and it just fuels my frustration even more. I overhear distant relatives talking about my grandfather's inheritance and how it should be shared, and it gives me this idea about how I might finally reclaim my independence. After the service, I confront my parents about the whispers and demand some respect. That conversation turns into a shouting match, with my dad saying that the family name is at stake. I tell him that my individuality is just as important as the family reputation, and I'm not backing down. In a bold move, I announce that I'm moving out for good. My parents are shocked, especially my mom, who is pleading for me to reconsider. But at this point, I just leave the house. I start looking for a small apartment to rent. I find one in a quiet neighborhood not too far from where my parents live. My brother Jake is super supportive and offers to help with the logistics and moving. During the move, I find this old box of family photos, and it just hits me. The good times, the bad times, everything that made me who I am. My parents reach out to me multiple times, just pleading for me to come back and reconsider. But I ignore all of it. I focus on my photography, capturing moments in my new life without all of the family interference. A month later, I get this message from the insurance agent about the inheritance. The message says that the inheritance is being contested by other family members. I feel this sense of urgency to protect my interests, so I decide to seek legal advice without involving my family. I consult with a legal professional to understand my rights and options regarding the inheritance. Turns out, I can challenge the contestation. I start preparing the necessary documents to assert my claim. During this whole process, I'm still building my photography portfolio. My parents eventually reach out one last time, wanting to meet again to resolve issues. I agree to meet. We set it up at a local cafe, and I know we're going to address the inheritance head-on. I feel prepared for this meeting because I know I'm taking control of my future. I plan to discuss my independence, the inheritance, and how to redefine my relationship with my parents. Edit. The memorial service made me realize my inheritance was mine to keep, and I didn't want to share it with my family. My brother helped me find a new apartment. Am I the idiot? for wanting to take a break from my emotionally abusive partner and visit my parents for support. For context, I am 24 years old and my partner is 24 years old. We have 2 kids together, both under 2 years old. We met and a couple of months later found out we were pregnant. Then we had our first child and a couple of months later got pregnant again. We've been together for over 2 years now. In the beginning of our relationship, things were good. I think partly because we were young, having fun, and not living together. But once I got pregnant and we moved in together, things changed. To keep it somewhat short, I felt emotionally abused in our relationship. He's been incredibly inconsiderate towards me. I felt very alone in both pregnancies, as he didn't attend any appointments with me, wouldn't give me massages if I asked, said I complained too much, and that there were other women going through much worse and doing much more than I was. He has been disrespectful many times towards me and my family. He's called me names, threw a pillow at me once, and constantly disagrees with things I believe or think. He fully believes childcare is my responsibility. Now, he's gotten a little better with some of these things. He hasn't thrown anything, and he's gotten better at not calling me names and taking a pause in some arguments. He now helps a bit more with the kids. All of that came after months of crying and begging. So progress is being made. However, is that enough? We have 2 girls, and I don't want them to think how he treats me is okay. Like I said, he's slowly getting better. I suggested we take a break, and I would go with our kids to visit my parents for a little while. That way I can have a tremendous amount of help with our kids, and I can have time to heal from the hurt and find myself again. Because I've completely lost myself in the relationship and motherhood. I also want to evaluate how I am in relationships and how I can improve and grow. He's not going for it. He says if we take a break, it's forever. That I would be the one tearing apart the family and ruining everything. That our kids would grow up without a constant dad figure in their lives, and that will traumatize them. There is love between us, but I don't think it's healthy love. We're both struggling in our new roles, and we only have each other where we live. We are so codependent and isolated that it's not healthy. I don't get as much help as I do when I visit my mom, and then he doesn't have to deal with me as I'm navigating postpartum and struggling to find myself. Another aspect of our relationship is religion, so keep that in mind. I believe that couples should be married if they live together or are intimate. Clearly, I strayed from that value to have even gotten into this situation, but it's still something I want. I told him the options were to get married or separate temporarily. We both feel we can't get married now because we need counseling and to heal from past hurts, but he still thinks we shouldn't separate because marriage isn't determined by the law or the state. On the other hand, my family is telling me that if I decide to stay with him, their relationship with me will change and they won't be as willing to help me. That they will only really stay in contact to see our kids. I don't want to ruin my family with my partner and traumatize our kids, but I also don't want my family to abandon me. My biggest fear is that I stay and things get worse, and I really regret not separating when I had the chance. But I also fear that if I do separate from him, I will realize I want our family together again after I've healed, and he won't agree. And our kids will come out hurt and traumatized from it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, you are extremely young to be a mother of 2, even in the best of circumstances. Of course you need support. It sounds to me like you really need this break. You say you'll get the help you need, have time to heal and to reflect on your life. You say you feel you've completely lost myself in the relationship and motherhood. It sounds to me like you are in crisis. So I suggest doing what you need to do to take care of yourself and not worrying about whether time apart will teach him some kind of lesson. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I do know that a partner who cares about your well-being and mental health, not to mention that of your young children, will support you in getting the help you need, not issue ultimatums. That's on him. You do what you need to do to take care of you. Comment 2. I suggested a break because we do still have love for each other and care about each other and our family together. I hoped me explaining what the break would be for would enable him to consider it, especially since I have clarified that it isn't me breaking up with him, just needing space. And I agree. I don't want us to stay together and things not get better, and they get worse, and our kids grow older and start to really recognize the behaviors and either view them as acceptable or begin to even replicate them. But because of the small changes I have seen, is it worth sticking it out a bit and believing him? It has been 2 long years, and I'm tired of crying almost every night over something. I'm having a difficult time accepting that we'll never be a regular family again if I decide to take that space and leave. Now, for the update. 3 days after my last post, I got this text from my partner. He tells me that there's going to be a family dinner at his parents' house to celebrate his mom's birthday. I'm thinking, great, just what I need. A big family gathering where everyone's going to act like everything's fine. But it's his mom's birthday, so I just say, okay, and I hope for a peaceful evening. Spoiler alert, I didn't get one. When we get to the house, it's just off. His parents are super friendly, but I can tell there's some underlying stuff going on. It's like I'm walking on eggshells, and everyone knows it. We sit down for dinner, and his mom starts asking about the kids' sleeping habits, which was fine, but then she mentions how her daughter-in-law used to manage things when she was young. I immediately get this knot in my stomach. I know she's talking about herself, and I can just feel the tension rising. Like, can I live, please? After dinner, the kids start getting fussy, and my partner, true to form, has a short fuse. He's snapping at them for being noisy, and I'm over here like, really? It's a birthday party, and you're yelling at our daughters for having fun? I step in to calm the situation down and remind him to be a little patient, but he flips out on me. Says I'm too soft and that the kids need discipline. I'm trying to keep my voice down because we're still at this family dinner, but I'm fuming. So we start arguing quietly in the corner while everyone else is having dessert. And his dad tries to make a joke to lighten the mood, but it's just awkward, and I can tell everyone's uncomfortable. My partner brushes off the argument as a minor disagreement, but I know it's deeper than that. It feels like we're in 2 different places, and I'm not sure he even knows it. As we're leaving, his parents pull me aside. His mom looks really concerned, and his dad's got that serious look on his face. They express concern about how my partner treats me and suggest I consider my well-being. I'm just standing there, nodding, saying thank you, but inside, I'm like, do something about it then. You're his parents, for crying out loud. We get home, and he's quiet and distant, which feels like a familiar and unsettling pattern. I go to bed thinking maybe tomorrow will be better. It wasn't. The next day, my sister calls to check in. She's all excited about this upcoming family trip to the beach, and I'm like, yes, we need this. I think it'll be a good chance for the kids and me to bond. But my partner's not having any of it. He's opposed to the idea, worried it'll lead to further separation. I'm trying to explain how this trip could be a chance for some family bonding, but he's brushing me off, saying it'll just highlight all our issues. Like, dude, do you even hear yourself? So I go to my parents for the trip, and when I get there, they're super welcoming, but I notice my dad's unusually quiet. During dinner, my mom mentions that my dad's been worried about my partner's behavior. I'm thinking, well, join the club. That night, my partner calls, and he's furious that I left without discussing it. We get into this huge argument over the phone, and he's insisting I'm abandoning our family. So dramatic. The next day, I take the kids to a local park while my parents watch them. I'm just trying to clear my head. While I'm there, I run into my childhood friend, and she mentions seeing my partner out at a bar several times recently. I confront him about it later, and he denies it, but seems so defensive. This kicks off a bigger argument about trust and transparency in our relationship. The kids overhear part of the argument, and I just feel so guilty for exposing them to this. Like, what kind of mother am I? I know kids pick up on conflict, and I just want to protect them from all this craziness. I decide to take them to my sister's house for a change of scenery. At my sister's, we have a family dinner where everyone laughs and shares stories. It felt good, but I noticed my sister and brother-in-law exchanging worried looks when I talked about my partner. The tension really mounts when my sister suggests that maybe it's time to think about a more permanent solution. I mean, wow, I wasn't ready for that. After returning home, I find this letter from my partner detailing all his frustrations and feelings of abandonment. He ends it by demanding that we seek couples counseling immediately or he'll consider separating. Now I'm just sitting on the couch, this letter in my hand, and I know the stakes have never been higher. Mini update. I eventually agreed to couples counseling. We went for 2 sessions, but he refused to go any further. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.